we embark on today's captivating tale, a brief note: more than 90% of our audience enjoys our videos but hasn't hit that subscribe button yet. If this content resonates with you, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications to stay updated with our latest posts. If this story strikes a chord with you, please consider liking the video. It truly supports our efforts. My name is Clara, and I have been happily married to my husband, Daniel, for more than 14 years. Our paths crossed in college, a tale often recounted at reunions, accompanied by warm smiles and nostalgia. In those days, Daniel exuded charm, possessed a sharp wit, displayed ambition, and radiated unwavering confidence in his direction. I tended to be the more reserved individual, concentrated, gentle in my speech, and attracted to a sense of security. We complemented one another in ways that felt right in that moment. We tied the knot at a young age, perhaps a bit too soon. I was 23 and Daniel was 25. The early days unfolded in a haze of temporary homes, financial burdens, simple meals, and debates about dishwashing duties. Yet, our love endured through every challenge. I believed we had, at the very least. By the time we reached our mid-30s, everything had changed. Daniel had forged a prosperous path in finance, while I had chosen to pause my own journey to nurture our 2 children, Layla and James. Initially, I found that choice acceptable. I convinced myself that being at home for the children was a noble pursuit, that my unwavering presence held more value than any salary could offer. Yet gradually, without my awareness, I began to lose fragments of who I am. Days melded into one another, dawns filled with routine, lunches meticulously prepared, school runs, shopping lists, culinary preparations, and nights that stretched on. Amidst Daniel's business trips and board meetings, our conversations drifted away from the things that truly mattered. Exchanges turned into mere updates, embraces transformed into habitual gestures, and closeness diminished into the practicalities of daily family existence. I couldn't fully hold him accountable. We both allowed the gap to widen. Yet, what pained me the most was the overwhelming sense of invisibility I experienced. Last spring, a transformation unfolded. That was the moment Aiden returned to the house next door. He had spent his childhood just 2 houses away, the sole offspring of the Lyles, who had been our neighbors for many years. Aiden comes to mind as a lively, spirited child, perpetually seen kicking a soccer ball or cycling with his friends. At 18, he departed for college in California, and we seldom received updates about him thereafter. Upon the passing of his mother, he came back at the age of 23, newly graduated, and taking on the responsibility of caring for his father, whose health had declined. The moment our paths crossed once more, he was busy unloading boxes from a U-Haul, as I was pruning the hedges in the front yard. He didn't register in my mind immediately. He stood tall and broad-shouldered, exuding the effortless confidence characteristic of youth in their 20s. Upon catching sight of me, a smile spread across his face. "Mrs. Owens," I chuckled. "That name is off limits for you. It gives me an air of antiquity." He smiled broadly. "I apologize, Clara." It all began with a simple smile, a name, and a moment of reintroduction. In the weeks that followed, I frequently observed him mowing the lawn for his father, walking their dog, or sitting on the porch, absorbed in a book or engaged in conversation on the phone. We engaged in the usual friendly banter, discussing the weather, sharing local news and voicing our frustrations about the delays in garbage collection. Everything seems quite ordinary. However, as midsummer approached, our discussions became more extensive. One afternoon, I found myself grappling with a malfunctioning sprinkler head in the backyard. Daniel was gone, as always, and I hesitated to reach out to a plumber for something so trivial. Aiden spotted from his porch and approached. "Do you require assistance?" he inquired. After a moment of uncertainty, I gave a slight nod. "It's quite humiliating. I've been grappling with this for 20 minutes. He knelt next to me, toying with the pipe, intent, calm, and perhaps even slightly entertained by my exasperation. In just a few moments, the sprinkler sprang back into action. "There," he remarked, wiping the soil from his hands. "It's not that difficult. Simple for you to suggest." I chuckled. At that instant, a transformation occurred. It wasn't overtly dramatic, yet I sensed it, a delicate shift in the atmosphere whenever he entered the room. He would wave when he spotted me tending to the garden, linger during our conversations, and inquire about my well-being, not merely as a formality, but with sincere curiosity. I discovered that my responses were not merely courteous, they stemmed from a profound place within me, one I wasn't prepared to identify. Anticipation began to build within me at the thought of encountering him. Whenever I baked, I made sure to set aside some extra for him and his dad. During my walks, I would steal a glance at their porch, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. It lacked romance, not at this moment. I reassured myself that it wasn't. It was the recognition, the warmth, the feeling of being seen for who I truly am beyond my contributions to others. Then, on a late August afternoon, a pivotal moment arrived. The heat enveloped the day while the children enjoyed their time at a friend's home. As I sat on the porch, sipping iced tea and engrossed in my book, Aiden approached, carrying a folder. "Hey, would you be open to sharing your thoughts with me?" He was submitting applications to graduate schools and sought input on his personal statement. I felt honored that he recalled my past as an English teacher before I decided to stay home. We spent more than an hour engaged in a deep conversation about his essay, aspirations, and dreams. He paid close attention, inquired thoughtfully, and restored my sense of importance. Afterward, he reclined and remarked, "You ought to continue with this. Clara, instructing. You possess too much intelligence to remain on the sidelines." I gazed at him, taken by surprise. Years have passed. Text, I'm at a loss for how to start. "You would excel? Clearly, that's the case." It wasn't just the words themselves, but the way he delivered them, sincere, raw, as if he recognized something within me that I had long overlooked. That night, sleep eluded me. His voice resonated, and the way he gazed at me was not filled with pity or mere courtesy, but with genuine admiration. It awakened a feeling I had long kept hidden. In the weeks that followed, our time together increased. He would swing by with his dog, inquire about my garden, and bring along a book he believed I would enjoy. There was perpetually a rationale, a justification. Yet, we were both aware of the reality. We maintained our boundaries, yet the emotional ones faded rapidly. One evening, as I sat in my backyard watching the sunset, he remarked softly, You seem lonely sometimes. I was at a loss for words. I wished to refuse it, to claim I was okay, yet I found myself unable to do so. At times, I confessed. He nodded, his gaze filled with a poignant mix of sorrow and empathy. You are meant for so much more than just being a supporting role. Clara. That sentence lingered in my mind. The sound reverberated as I prepared dinner, arranged the laundry, and found myself in solitude within the stillness of the house once the children had drifted off to sleep. I pondered it all. Was this life a choice I made, or merely a compromise I accepted? Daniel observed the shift, though only slightly. He found himself engulfed in a whirlwind of tasks, conferences, correspondence, and time constraints. He would inquire about my well-being. But it would be a fleeting moment. I would express my fatigue. He would acknowledge with a nod and turn his attention back to his phone. Aiden, however, paid attention. He brought me into the light, made me feel significant. I was completely lost in my actions. I had no intention of departing, deceiving, or causing ruin. I felt adrift, and Aiden brought me back to solid ground. Yet, I was acutely aware of the precariousness of my situation. A single miscalculation, and the entire structure could come crashing down. I reassured myself that it was innocent, merely companionship, just a person who brought a spark to my existence. Yet, beneath the surface, I sensed that innocence wouldn't last indefinitely. The subsequent days were steeped in a hushed bewilderment. I consistently evaluated my choices, their appearances, and their implications. I hadn't crossed any boundaries, yet I felt myself inching toward a point of no return. I began to distance myself from Aiden, purposefully withdrawing and allowing for some space between us. I believed that by concentrating on Daniel, the children, and the life I had created, those emotions would eventually diminish. Yet feelings cannot simply disappear at will. And space, I discovered, can often enhance the bonds we share. Aiden held back. He maintained a respectful demeanor, keeping a certain distance while remaining polite. Yet I sensed he was aware. His waves had diminished, his smiles had shrunk. Even though his visits became infrequent, a silent connection remained whenever our gazes crossed over the fence or from our porches. The void was palpable for both of us. At home, everything appeared to be just as it should be. Daniel toiled into the night, perpetually weary, perpetually unfocused. On certain nights, he took refuge in the guest room, claiming it was due to back pain or the promise of a more restful slumber. I chose not to engage in a debate. The distance had insidiously woven itself into the fabric of our lives, rendering it almost a familiar presence. However, it was not the case. The children, fortunately, remained unaware, engrossed in their assignments and upcoming weekend activities. I maintained the facade, prepared lunches, assisted with school assignments, and cheered enthusiastically at Layla's soccer matches and James's piano performances. Yet within, I was coming apart at the seams. Late one night, Daniel returned home after midnight, lounging on the couch. I found myself skimming through a book that had been neglected for the past 20 minutes. He let his keys fall onto the counter, releasing a heavy sigh. "Apologies, it's been a long day." I acknowledged with a nod. "It seems you've been experiencing quite a few of those recently." He sat opposite me, his hands pressed against his weary eyes. I understand. It has been an unending stream of activity. The new clients are quite the challenge. We lingered in quietude, the distance separating us vast, frigid, brimming with unexpressed thoughts. Have you ever sensed that we're merely sharing a space? I inquired abruptly, my tone softer than I had meant it to be. Are we merely existing side by side, just going through the motions? He gazed upward, taken aback. Pardon? What's the source of this? I don't know, I replied, even though I was fully aware. I suppose I simply long for conversation, truly engaging in conversation. He let out a deeper sigh this time. Clara, I'm putting in my utmost effort. The workload is quite daunting. The children require our support. We can't spend every evening dissecting our marriage. I gazed at him intently. For a fleeting instant, he sensed an unfamiliarity within himself. I'm not looking for a lecture, Daniel. I'm requesting a dialogue. He stood there, moving back and forth. What would you like me to express? I apologize for my fatigue. Are you suggesting that I leave my job and spend the entire day relaxing on the porch with you? That hurt, not due to its cruelty, but because it felt so dismissive. I wasn't seeking the whole world, merely a piece of it. No, I replied gently. I simply desire to sense that you recognize my presence. His expression wavered, revealing a blend of guilt and defensiveness. Yet he exited without uttering a word. That night, I lay awake, gazing at the ceiling, my thoughts wandering to Aidan, to the way he listened, always making me feel like my requests were perfectly reasonable. The following day, I followed my usual schedule, running errands, tidying up, and getting dinner ready. As the late afternoon sun cast its warm glow, I found myself outside, carefully trimming the bushes that bordered our yards. I convinced myself it was unintentional. Seeing Aidan on his porch, lost in his world with headphones on and sketching in a notebook, sent a jolt through my heart. I paused for a moment, then raised my hand in a wave. He glanced upwards, a smile spreading across his face, and took off his headphones. Greetings. Unfamiliar face. I returned the smile. Hello. He approached, halting a short distance away. You've been hard to find. I understand, I replied, tucking my hair behind my ear. I simply required some mental clarity. He nodded with deliberation. Was it beneficial? I have some doubts. A lengthy silence ensued. Not awkward, but laden with unexpressed thoughts. Would you like to go for a stroll? He inquired unexpectedly. Merely a short stroll away. It's nothing to worry about. After a moment of uncertainty, I gave a slight nod. Understood. We strolled quietly at the beginning. The autumn air sharp and invigorating. The sky painted with the soft colors of early evening. The sound of leaves crunching beneath my feet echoed in the quiet, creating a serene backdrop that allowed my thoughts to flow freely. You're not insane, you realize, he remarked after a pause. My gaze fell upon him. For experiencing a sense of invisibility, for seeking something deeper than mere routine. I released a breath, its presence marked in the crisp air. At times it seems as though I'm positioned at the center of my existence, invisible to those around me. He halted, pivoting to confront me. "I perceive you." The words lingered in the air, clear, sincere, and fraught with risk. I was at a loss for words. A constriction gripped my throat, and my eyes stung with unshed tears. I averted my gaze, concealing the wave of emotion that arose without warning. He didn't urge me, merely remained there, silently providing something I hadn't experienced in ages, a sense of being. That night, I found myself perched on the edge of my bed, tears streaming down my face, not due to any wrongdoing, but because I was acutely aware of the direction my heart was heading, and I felt utterly powerless to change its course. The weeks that followed were filled with tension. I attempted to steer clear of Aidan once more, yet it seemed utterly unfeasible. Our bond was no longer ambiguous. It was tangible, and suppressing it only intensified its power. He never uttered a word out of line, never laid a hand on me. Yet the entirety of our connection felt like a delicate strand, poised to break at any moment. One afternoon, he placed a book on my porch, a novel we'd talked about before, with a note tucked inside. For when the world becomes overwhelming, everyone deserves a moment of peace. I sat with the book resting on my lap, gazing at his handwriting, sensing my defenses collapse more swiftly than I could fortify them. I've picked up journaling once more, a practice I had set aside since my college days. I spilled my confusion, guilt, longing, and fear. I penned my reflections on the life I envisioned and the woman I had transformed into. A singular reality emerged. I found myself emotionally intertwined with someone who was not my spouse. I hadn't crossed the line physically, but in every significant way. I had ventured beyond the boundaries of my marriage. One evening, Daniel and I shared a meal in a hushed atmosphere. The children spent the weekend at their grandparents', a fleeting opportunity for reconnection, yet we found ourselves in different realms. The soft clatter of silverware filled the air. Afterward, I found myself at the sink, gazing out the window. I observed Aidan strolling with his dog beneath the glow of the streetlights. As our gazes locked, a rush of emotions surged within me, the hope, the remorse, the deep longing for a life that seemed forever out of reach. I averted my gaze, heart racing, clutching the counter until my knuckles turned pale. I was faced with a decision. What transpired next was far from chance. It was intentional. I had to determine the person I was going to become. I ascended the stairs and took a seat opposite Daniel in the bedroom. He was perusing through his emails. "I believe it's time for a conversation," I stated. He gazed upward, weariness etched on his face. "Concerning what?" "Our story, concerning all matters." He paused for a moment, then placed his phone aside. "Understood." I parted my lips, yet the words eluded me. There was an overwhelming amount, an excess of time, silence, everything accumulating between us. "It feels as though I'm merely existing," I finally admitted. "It feels as though I'm merely existing, moving through each day without purpose, and I'm not sure how much longer I can endure this." He appeared hesitant. "Are you implying that you wish to depart?" "I'm not sure," I admitted candidly. "I'm expressing that a transformation is necessary." He reclined, inhaling deeply and exhaling with calm deliberation. "It seems you're feeling discontent." "No, I confessed, I doubt you are as well." The dialogue concluded without hostility, no blame, no forceful exits, merely two individuals recognizing the distance that had grown between them. I haven't brought up Aidan, not at this point. That will happen at a later time. It was essential for me to gain insight into my own being first. The subsequent days were contemplative. I separated myself from both Daniel and Aidan, not due to anger, but out of necessity. I sought understanding. I dedicated moments to solitude, strolling in the morning, finding stillness in library nooks, and pouring my thoughts into my journal. After a long time, I confronted my true self with sincerity. I confessed to feeling isolated, that the quietness in my marriage had left me feeling empty. I acknowledged that Aidan had revealed to me what I had been lacking, yet he was not the solution to all my problems. On a serene afternoon, I rapped gently on Aidan's door. His expression was one of surprise, yet he remained quiet as I passed him the letter. "Kindly take a moment to read it later," I said softly. "I require solitude to reconstruct my being, not with the help of others, but independently." After that, I turned and left. As the evening wore on, Daniel and I found ourselves seated at the kitchen table. I shared the truth with him, not every single detail, but sufficient information. For the first time in years, he engaged in genuine listening. We conversed, not as unfamiliar faces, but as two individuals contemplating the possibilities of a future, if any, that we might reconstruct together. Aidan wasn't my choice. I selected the path of healing. In that moment, I rediscovered who I truly am.